The thought that a small circle of immensely wealthy people can make decisions that touch the lives of millions sounds like the beginning of a dramatic story. Yet the reality is woven into ordinary routines rather than secret theaters. Money at that scale does not sit still. It moves through banks, companies, and governments, shaping what is built and what quietly disappears. When large investors choose to support a technology, that choice influences the kind of jobs students prepare for and the products families see in their neighborhoods. Streets change, prices shift, and new habits grow from those financial currents. None of this requires a conspiracy. It requires only the normal mechanics of power. Understanding this helps remove both panic and fantasy. The issue is not whether influential people exist, but how their priorities travel through systems that everyone uses. Every loan approval, every digital service, and every advertisement carries a fragment of someone's intention about the future. Recognizing this network does not make ordinary people helpless. It simply reveals the map on which daily choices are made. Awareness allows individuals to notice when a trend serves them and when it quietly narrows their possibilities. The first step toward independence is learning to see the invisible architecture surrounding familiar life. At the same time, it is easy to exaggerate the unity of the wealthy, imagining them as a single mind issuing commands. In truth, fortunes compete with one another just as neighbors do, and their owners disagree about nearly everything. What looks like a major decision from the outside is often a temporary meeting of interests, driven by fear of losing advantage. Markets reward cooperation one year and rivalry the next. Because of this, ordinary citizens retain more influence than headlines suggest. Consumers choose where attention and money flow, and those choices can redirect even the largest companies. The important lesson is to avoid surrendering responsibility to distant figures. They may design opportunities, but individuals decide how to respond to them. A community that learns new skills or supports honest businesses gradually reshapes the environment created by wealth. Power moves in circles rather than in straight lines, and the public stands inside those circles. Understanding that dynamic replaces the myth of helplessness with a more balanced picture. Influence exists, yet it is never absolute. The future remains a conversation between many voices, not a single decree delivered from above. Money never travels alone. It moves wrapped in stories that tell people what to admire and what to fear. When influential figures announce a new direction for their investments, they are also offering a vision of the future, a picture of which dreams deserve attention. The public usually hears the confident version of that vision, polished to sound inevitable. Behind the curtain, however, those decisions are mixtures of uncertainty, competition, and personal interest. Recognizing this gap between the speech and the struggle is important. It reminds ordinary people that they are not simply subjects of a grand design, but participants whose reactions give that design strength or weakness. If communities accept every narrative handed to them, the narrative becomes powerful. If they question it, alternatives begin to grow. The so-called major decision affecting individuals is therefore not only made in offices of wealth, it is also made in living rooms, classrooms, and workplaces where people decide what they will value. Markets follow belief as much as they follow money. Understanding this restores a measure of dignity to daily choices. Each time a person supports a fair business or rejects a harmful trend, the story surrounding wealth changes slightly, proving that influence is a conversation rather than a command. This perspective also reveals why fear often accompanies discussions about powerful groups. Dramatic language simplifies complex economic movements into tales of heroes and villains, which attract attention but hide responsibility. Real economies resemble vast ecosystems where countless actions interact. A single investment can create opportunities in one region while causing difficulties in another, and no planner fully controls those ripple effects. Seeing this complexity does not excuse greed, yet it prevents the paralyzing belief that destiny is sealed by a few hands. Ordinary citizens possess tools that previous generations lacked: education available online, networks for cooperation, and the ability to compare information from many sources. These tools allow people to respond creatively to whatever direction wealth takes. The crucial decision becomes how individuals use their attention and energy. By learning skills, supporting one another, and speaking honestly about needs, communities gradually shape the environment in which even billionaires must operate. The future remains open terrain, influenced by large fortunes, but never owned by them. Modern technology forms the bridge between enormous wealth and the small details of everyday life. The devices people carry in their pockets were designed by companies whose leaders decide how information should flow and what services deserve attention. When those leaders adjust an algorithm or launch a new platform, millions of routines change without any announcement on a public square. News appears in a different order, products are suggested at new moments, and conversations drift toward topics favored by invisible calculations. This can feel as if a remote hand is guiding society, yet the hand is made of choices rather than destiny. Technology amplifies intentions, but it also amplifies the responses of users. The same networks that promote advertising can spread education, creativity, and solidarity. Understanding this dual nature prevents both blind trust and hopeless suspicion. The major decision attributed to powerful investors becomes meaningful only when ordinary people interact with it. Every click, message, and purchase is a tiny vote about the kind of digital world that will grow. Recognizing that participation helps individuals step out of the role of passive spectators and into the role of co-authors of their environment. This awareness invites a more deliberate relationship with screens and platforms. Instead of drifting through applications designed solely for profit, people can ask what habits those tools encourage. Do they strengthen patience, learning, and community, or do they scatter attention and deepen anxiety? Such questions return a measure of control to the user. Wealth may build the stage, but culture writes the play performed upon it. When groups of friends support thoughtful content or protect one another from harmful trends, they quietly redirect the power of technology. The influence of billionaires then becomes only one ingredient among many, balanced by creativity from below. History shows that innovations often escape the intentions of their creators, taking on lives of their own. By approaching new tools with curiosity rather than surrender, individuals ensure that the future shaped by technology remains human in spirit. The real decision about each person is therefore made not in distant offices, but in the daily manner in which they choose to engage with the digital world surrounding them. It is easy to imagine the wealthy as a single disciplined army, yet the reality is a noisy crowd of competing ambitions. Fortunes rise from different industries, cultures, and personal histories, and their owners rarely agree on what the future should look like. One investor may support clean energy, while another defends older businesses. One dreams of expanding education, while another focuses on entertainment. Newspapers compress this variety into the image of one powerful group, because simple pictures travel faster than complicated truths. Remembering the diversity inside wealth prevents the feeling that society is ruled by an unbreakable wall. What appears as a major decision is often a fragile compromise that could shift with the next invention or election. Ordinary people can study these differences and choose where to lend their support. By favoring companies and leaders who respect communities, citizens encourage better behavior among those with resources. Influence becomes a landscape with many paths rather than a single road controlled from above. Seeing this landscape clearly allows individuals to move through it with confidence instead of resentment. Acknowledging disagreement among the rich also restores the importance of public institutions. Laws, schools, and local organizations continue to shape life alongside private fortunes. When communities participate in those institutions, they balance the weight of money with the weight of shared values. The presence of billionaires does not cancel the power of voters, teachers, and small business owners. In fact, the rivalry among large fortunes often creates openings for civic action because competing interests seek public approval. The narrative that a hidden circle has decided everything overlooks this ongoing negotiation. Real societies function like conversations where many voices interrupt and correct one another. Understanding that process encourages patience and involvement rather than surrender. The future remains flexible precisely because wealth is not unified. Each citizen who learns, votes, and cooperates becomes part of the counterweight that keeps power human. The major decision affecting individuals is therefore still being written line by countless participants who refuse to believe that destiny belongs to only a few hands. Headlines about distant elites often tempt people to forget the quiet authority of their own choices. When a story announces that powerful figures have planned the future, many feel relieved of responsibility, as if personal effort no longer matters. Yet the texture of history shows the opposite. Great changes usually begin with small, persistent actions: a student mastering a difficult skill, a neighbor starting a helpful business, a family teaching honesty to children. These acts create forms of wealth that cannot be counted on a balance sheet. They shape character, trust, and resilience, qualities that influence society long after financial trends have shifted. The decision that most directly governs any life is made by the person living it, in the way time and attention are spent each day. Powerful investors can alter conditions, but they cannot substitute for courage, discipline, or kindness. Remembering this protects individuals from the illusion that destiny arrives only from above. It encourages preparation instead of panic, and creativity instead of complaint. A community rich in skill and mutual respect becomes difficult for any outside plan to control. This sense of personal responsibility does not ignore economic realities, it places them in proper proportion. Markets may rise or fall according to choices made in high towers, yet families continue to learn, work, and care for one another. Those steady habits form the ground on which all larger decisions must eventually stand. When citizens develop talents and support ethical projects, they gradually reshape the environment that wealth seeks to influence. The so-called major decision about individuals is therefore answered daily by millions of smaller decisions about how to live. Each honest hour weakens the belief that only money directs the future. Instead, life appears as a partnership between circumstance and character. Recognizing this partnership helps people face uncertain times with dignity. They become less interested in guessing the secret intentions of the rich and more interested in building abilities that no announcement can take away. In that quiet strength lies a freedom greater than any fortune, a reminder that the most important authority remains within reach of ordinary hands. Discussions about great fortunes are often wrapped in a language of fear, as though a handful of people could redesign the human story overnight. Such language attracts attention because it simplifies uncertainty into a single dramatic cause. Real economic life is more tangled. Decisions made by wealthy leaders respond to pressures that affect everyone: changing climates, new inventions, growing populations, and shifting cultural expectations. These forces push even the richest individuals to adapt rather than to command. Seeing this broader context helps calm the imagination. It becomes clear that billionaires are not magicians standing outside history, but participants carried along by the same currents. They possess larger tools, yet those tools must answer to laws of supply, public opinion, and practical limits. Understanding these constraints does not excuse harmful behavior, but it prevents the paralyzing myth that society is controlled by hidden masters. Knowledge about how economies actually function becomes a form of courage. People who grasp budgets, technology, and civic processes are harder to frighten with rumors of secret plans. Education, therefore, stands at the center of any healthy response to stories about powerful groups. Instead of repeating alarming headlines, communities can study the mechanisms behind them. How do investments create jobs? Why do prices rise? What protections do laws offer to ordinary workers? Asking such questions replaces suspicion with competence. The major decision said to affect individuals then appears less like a verdict and more like a challenge to understand the world. Citizens who learn these skills gain the ability to negotiate with change rather than to hide from it. They discover that influence spreads through many channels, including votes, professional choices, and everyday cooperation. Fear shrinks when people see the levers that move society. In that light, the conversation about billionaires becomes an invitation to maturity. The future is not a storm sent by strangers, but a landscape shaped by countless informed actions. By choosing clarity over panic, individuals reclaim their place as thoughtful participants in the ongoing design of their communities. Community is the quiet force that balances the weight of enormous fortunes. An individual standing alone may feel small beside global companies, yet people rarely stand alone for long. Neighborhoods, professional circles, and online groups weave countless connections through which support and information travel. When these networks act together, they influence markets more steadily than any single investor can. A cooperative that buys locally, a classroom that teaches useful skills, or a group that defends fair treatment all send signals about the kind of society people want to inhabit. Such actions seldom appear in dramatic news, but they guide the everyday environment in which wealth must operate. The so-called major decision affecting individuals is therefore filtered through communities before it reaches personal life. Prices, opportunities, and cultural trends change according to how groups respond. Recognizing this collective strength replaces the lonely image of a citizen facing distant power with a more accurate picture of shared responsibility. The future grows from many hands joined rather than from one commanding gesture. These connections also protect human values that money alone cannot purchase. Trust, friendship, and mutual aid form a currency older than any market. When people organize around those values, they create spaces where dignity matters more than profit. Even the largest corporations depend on such goodwill to survive, for customers and workers bring their consciences to every exchange. Communities that care for one another therefore shape the behavior of the wealthy without needing secret meetings. They reward fairness and quietly punish neglect by choosing where to spend attention and effort. Understanding this process encourages participation instead of resentment. Each person who volunteers, mentors a child, or supports an honest enterprise adds a brick to a social foundation stronger than fear. The decision about what the future will look like becomes a shared project carried out in ordinary places. In that project, every voice counts, and the influence of billionaires becomes only one note within a much larger human chorus. Hope deserves a place beside caution whenever people speak about the power of wealth. Stories about decisive meetings among the rich can create the impression that the future has already been signed and sealed, yet human history repeatedly contradicts that feeling. Unexpected ideas rise from ordinary neighborhoods, new inventions appear in modest rooms, and social movements begin with a few determined voices. Those surprises remind us that creativity is scattered far more widely than money. The so-called major decision that supposedly concerns every individual remains only one influence among many. Economic plans meet the unpredictable energy of millions of lives, and the result is never exactly what any elite imagined. Remembering this keeps the heart from surrendering to rumors. It encourages people to prepare for change without assuming defeat. The universe of opportunity is larger than any conference table, and its doors open to those willing to learn and adapt. Hope in this sense is not naive optimism. It is confidence grounded in the evidence that ordinary effort continually reshapes grand designs. Living with that hope invites a practical attitude toward personal growth. Instead of watching the wealthy as if they were authors of destiny, individuals can focus on becoming authors of their own abilities, learning a trade, saving modest resources, caring for health, and treating others with respect. Create a foundation that no external decision can easily remove. Such habits prepare people for whatever direction markets may take. They also generate communities capable of guiding change rather than merely enduring it. The message hidden beneath sensational headlines is therefore simple. Power exists, but it does not own the future. Each person retains the freedom to respond with intelligence and kindness. When many choose that path, even the most influential plans must adjust. The final decision about who we become is written in daily conduct, not in distant boardrooms. Recognizing this truth allows individuals to walk forward as chosen ones in their own right, guided by values instead of by fear of invisible authority. The conversation about powerful fortunes ultimately leads to a question of identity. Who decides the story of an ordinary life? It is tempting to believe that a distant circle of wealth writes that story in bold strokes, yet daily experience suggests a more intricate authorship. Individuals wake each morning carrying memories, talents, and loyalties that no investor designed. These inner resources meet the outer world of prices and policies, and together they shape the path ahead. The idea that a group has made a major decision about you becomes less frightening when placed beside the countless decisions you continue to make about yourself. Choosing patience over anger, learning over distraction, or cooperation over rivalry quietly alters the landscape around you. Influence from above may open or close certain doors, but character decides how a person walks through them. Understanding this balance helps replace resentment with steady purpose. The future becomes a partnership between circumstance and will, not a script delivered by strangers. This final note also invites a broader definition of wealth. Money measures only a narrow band of human possibility, while life depends on many other riches: health, friendship, imagination, and moral courage. Billionaires can purchase buildings and platforms, yet they cannot manufacture trust or meaning. Those treasures grow in ordinary places where people listen to one another and keep their promises. When society remembers this, the drama surrounding elite decisions loses some of its weight. The true center of power shifts toward families, classrooms, and neighborhoods where values are taught and practiced. Each act of integrity becomes a quiet answer to the loud claims of money. By nurturing these forms of wealth, individuals ensure that no external plan can fully define them. The story of a life remains open, written page by page, through choices that belong to the heart. In that recognition lies a calm confidence. Whatever decisions the powerful announce, the deepest decision about you is still being made by you. Power, money, and influence often feel distant, abstract, and beyond comprehension, yet their effects touch the rhythm of daily life in subtle and consistent ways. When billionaires make a major decision, it rarely manifests as an immediate decree. Instead, it flows through markets, media, and technology, shaping opportunities and constraints gradually. The products people use, the services they encounter, and even the topics dominating conversation are influenced by the allocation of wealth at the top. Understanding this process does not require fear, only attention. The ordinary person can see that influence operates through choices rather than magic. Every time someone decides where to spend their money, what skills to develop, or what communities to support, they participate in the very network that channels power. Awareness transforms passivity into informed engagement, showing that while wealth may be concentrated, the consequences of decisions are shared among millions of individuals. Recognizing this interplay between systemic influence and personal agency allows people to navigate modern life with both clarity and confidence, understanding that the future is co-created rather than preordained. At the same time, focusing on this network highlights the limits of any individual or group, no matter how wealthy. Markets respond to demand, trends shift with culture, and technology spreads ideas in ways no single office can completely control. Billionaires can fund platforms, invest in industries, or set policy agendas, yet the ultimate shape of society depends on how people respond. Citizens, consumers, and communities provide feedback that strengthens or weakens any initiative. This perspective reframes the so-called major decision not as an unstoppable mandate, but as one factor among many influencing life. Recognizing these limits encourages practical engagement rather than panic. Education, skill building, ethical consumption, and civic participation become tools through which ordinary people interact with and influence the systems shaped by wealth. The power of large fortunes is real, yet it is neither absolute nor irreversible. When the public understands the mechanics behind headlines, influence becomes a dialogue, not a dictatorship. Individuals reclaim authority in their own lives by making deliberate, consistent choices that reflect their values rather than reacting blindly to distant power. Finally, this understanding reinforces the importance of hope and preparation. While wealth can accelerate change or introduce new challenges, it cannot remove the resilience, creativity, and foresight of individuals and communities. Ordinary actions, saving, learning, teaching, collaborating, build a foundation that shapes long-term outcomes. The most meaningful decisions are made daily, in ordinary spaces, and they collectively define the social, economic, and cultural environment. Awareness of systemic influence, paired with deliberate personal action, ensures that life remains co-authored. The distant decisions of billionaires matter, yet the trajectory of any individual remains firmly rooted in the choices they make. Understanding this dynamic offers clarity, agency, and confidence in navigating a world where power and opportunity are intertwined but never predetermined.